The Suns filled their two-way slot, at least one of them, with Chandler Hutchison, formerly of the Bulls and the Spurs. We're breaking it all down. What does it mean for team building? Will Hutchison actually play? And who is he? What should Suns fans know? All of that coming up right away on Locked On Suns.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Suns. I'm your host, Brendon Kleen. Follow me on Twitter at Brendon Kleen14. Follow the show on Twitter at Locked On PHX Suns. It is a Monday, which means Brandon's here joining us for a late Tuesday night edition of the podcast, recording releasing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday this week. So appreciate everybody's patience trying to relax a little bit, take a load off. And the Labor Day weekend was an opportunity to do that. How was your weekend though, Brandon?
Pretty good. Nice little recharge to the weekend and my birthday week. So a lot of festivities and stuff like that going on. So
hey, happy birthday.
Appreciate it.
Didn't even know. Look at that. Yeah, we are going to talk about Chandler Hutchison. Just from all those angles. I mean, what does it mean? Older player. They did fill a two-way, still have one open. So we'll hit it from all the different sides here. But just for those who, maybe didn't hear the news, this is a player who was with the Bulls and then changed teams as part of the DeMar DeRozan trade over the offseason, the sign-in trade that put DeRozan in Chicago from the Spurs. The Spurs just recently cut him, I believe, just as his guarantee date was coming up. So he was on the scrap heap, but is a fairly young player at just 25, was only drafted 3 seasons ago, and now fills a two-way slot for the Suns. That is per Dwayne Rankin as well as Brandon reporting that. So what did you make when you saw the news come down? Because I don't think that was necessarily the direction I was expecting the Suns to go. I had honestly missed that Hutchison even got cut. But, I get the former first-round pick. It's not too out of the ordinary. What did you make of it?
Yeah, no, I liked it. I kind of caught everyone off guard, I think, just because everyone expected it to be that last roster spot. So there was probably a little bit of panic there in the beginning. But on a two-way deal that at least what I've heard, it sounds like that's what their intention is. So I think that's a no-brainer. We've already talked about it in the past, just with Ty-Shon, how valuable it is to just take a swing and use it, and to take it on a guy that's a former first-round pick that in the 2018 draft, he actually was promised by the Bulls, never ended up working out or doing anything in the combine. So there's no official measurement of his vertical, but this dude he gets up there, he can really leap. So he's interesting. He can finish through contact and all that good stuff. But yeah, he's just another member of the 2018 draft class that is pretty deep. Him and Shamet actually both in that back end of the first round. So definitely just kind of caught me off guard. And I think it's a good use of their two-way though.
We found the Suns, the margin that they're trying to play on, which is just get every first-round pick from 2018. They have 4 of them now. So it is very interesting, but it does play into the kind of general way that I think, Jones has gone about building this team, which is something I want to get to in the next segment of, not common necessarily in the NBA to see a 25-year-old guy who was picked that long ago get a two-way contract, to just not really how most teams spend them. So we'll talk about that in a second. But just as a player, you mentioned it, he is an unreal athlete. There were highlights going around of a dunk he had last season with Washington on a dish from Russell Westbrook that was already kind of going viral among Suns fans. And, coming out of college, he was a player who was thought of as a little bit of a creator coming out of Boise State, and sort of, a point forward type of versatile option. I think really, to me, not that I've watched this guy day in and day out, what it looks like from afar, having, evaluated him a little bit coming out of that draft and now seeing what the career has looked like so far, it's just that the jump shot it hasn't been there. And his scoring, his shot creation for himself hasn't really been there either. So he's basically a, athletic, talented, can play some defense, but really not much of an all-around player at this point. I mean, what have you gotten the sense of from Hutchison since he did join the league?
Yeah, no, that's a pretty good synopsis, I think. I just remember coming out of the draft, everyone kind of wanted him to be a 3-and-D guy, but the 3 wasn't really there yet. He has the tools athletically, like you mentioned, not just on the dunks, but just defensively. There's some flashes where, you could kind of see it with him. So I think they just kind of like having that insurance wing that doesn't take up a roster spot. And so, yeah, I think just someone that you look at Nader and kind of his profile, he could kind of slot in that same type of role. And obviously, like you mentioned, just the shot is really the main it factor with him. If he can find a way to even just get around league average or around that and continue to build off finishing around the rim and stuff like that, he could be a useful wing that could eat up some minutes. So, yeah, he's definitely shown some flashes. He's had some pretty big games in the NBA, so it's not like he's a complete, reclamation project like Cameron Payne was going overseas and in the G League and all that. He hasn't gone quite that far, but he's still someone that I think he needs to bounce back a little bit in a way. So this is a good opportunity for him. And I liked his Instagram caption just saying, go somewhere where you're wanted and prove them right. I think that's kind of the culture they've built in Phoenix. So it's cool to see them take another swing. And all these Bulls fans saying he's not an NBA player, it sounds very familiar to campaign. So we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, at the end of the day, he is probably not going to play too much of a role. I mean, we'll get to that at the end. I do think you're right. It's insurance. If you think he's behind Abdul Nader on the depth chart, I think that sort of says all that needs to be said. But I guess one thing that I would be looking at is, as a shooter, because he's one of these guys where as a senior, he takes 128 attempts at Boise State, makes 36% of them. But the year before, 70 or so attempts, made 38% of them. And then obviously sort of the bottom falls out from underneath of him in the NBA, from an efficiency standpoint, but he's never in an NBA season taken more than 50. So I don't really know why that's the case. I don't necessarily feel great about him as a shooter, but I also don't think he's one of these guys that's just hopeless for. It's not, Michael Carter Williams or something like that, Josh Jackson out there. And so can the Suns system, the Suns, the very, very limited role that he will play, could that potentially help him? We've seen it with Javon Carter. We've seen it with Frank Kaminsky. We've seen it with different guys where they do shoot a little bit better than Aaron Baines, even than you might expect, just because of the way that the Suns play. Not likely, but I think it's at least a possibility. I also wanted to correct myself. He was on the Wizards, as I just said, with that highlight. So he did not go from that DeMar DeRozan trade. I just assumed that in my head, but it was part of that huge 5-team deal, and he went from Washington to the Spurs, and then that is what led them to cut him. But let's talk about the philosophy here a little bit, because you and I kind of went in on them a little bit for cutting Ty-Shon Alexander, and are they really not going to use the two-way slot? Is this how they're going to operate, et cetera, et cetera? And this move at least shows that they're willing to do it, and we'll talk about what that means. First, though, a quick word from SweatBlock, which is the new sponsor from our show. I was able to swing by my parents' house, get that sample that they sent me, and have already started to try to use it. And the craziest part that they say is that it works for up to 7 days per use. And I think anyone who hears that's going to be a little bit skeptical, but SweatBlock, you wipe that under your arm. It is the little secret to confidence in your back pocket, and it stops the sweat and moisture and odor in its tracks we're going on 2 or 3 days. Not that I have not reapplied, but I can still feel it, and it's working. So it really, really does. I can't necessarily guarantee the week yet, but they promise it. I trust them. They've been a bestseller on Amazon for the past 10 years, over 13,000 reviews. It's not like your normal deodorant. It is a wipe. You just literally apply it to wherever that moisture is coming. It stops everything. No odor, no sweat. Again, that little secret to confidence in your back pocket. You can wear what you want to wear, can fit in a bag, in a wallet, even in a briefcase. It's portable. It's there for you. It stops those uncomfortable moments before they even start. So if you or someone you love deals with this, has this problem, you have got to check out SweatBlock. Get it today for 20% off at sweatblock.com with the promo code LOCKEDON or at Amazon and CVS. Today's show also brought to you by DirecTV. Does this sound familiar? You've got one device letting you watch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows. You got sports highlights on your phone and your neighbor's best friend login for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all that entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV all together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. The best part, there is no annual contract, so get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. Okay, let's get to the sort of roster makeup part of this. And we had criticized the Suns for cutting Ty-Shon Alexander. You know, why not? Why not just invest in a player like that? There's literally nothing to lose except for, you know, a couple $100,000, whatever those guys make. And I guess you could say they've sort of answered that. They still have one two-way slot open after signing Hutchison, but the thing that sticks out to me, Brandon, is this guy is 25 and is a player who we've seen a lot from. It's not typically how teams allocate their roster spots or their two-way spots necessarily. But again, there is some promise there. So very different option than to keep Ty-Shon Alexander on the roster.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not a typical two-way contract age, like just the most James Jones thing you could ever imagine. But I think it's just kind of a smart move for him, like to, in a sneaky way, just give them some depth that doesn't take up a roster spot. You're probably not going to need him. Like, I'm not going to beat around the bush. In a perfect world, he never plays unless they're up by like 30 exactly. Or in the garbage time and stuff like that, because everyone's healthy and they have a very good wing depth and forward depth chart. So right now, I think he's just kind of that, you know, break glass if there's an emergency type valve that can step in, and at least he's in the system. You could plug him in right away and he could eat up, you know, a couple weeks worth of minutes if someone has a sprained ankle or something like that, or COVID, you name it. So yeah, I think just, you know, why not both though at the same time? You could have kept Ty-Shon and him, but I'm glad they're using one of them. Maybe they'll use another one before the season starts. I'd love to see it maybe on a prospect this time, but I get the thinking. Actually, it's kind of like a sneaky, like smart little under the radar move that could pay off over the course of an 82 game season, because you already know this year there's going to be a lot of you know, rest and, you know, back-to-backs and crazy stuff like that. So I think it's a smart move.
Yeah, and probably, as we're seeing with the NFL, still not out of the woods with, you know, COVID-related absences, the protocols, all that stuff's going to continue to play a part. So I think having basically a pseudo contributor on that two-way contract is not a bad plan at all. It is unorthodox though, obviously. And so you don't have the flexibility to, you know, if that guy were to pop off in some way, yes, you have the inherent advantage of like he's on your roster and, you know, you can have that to sign him again, but nothing, you know, he's not going to become, you know, an option and all this like you could with another player. He's not going to be a restricted free agent like a second round pick might have been. So in that way, you're losing the flexibility. You're losing the advantages of having a young player. But I agree. Like, I think at the very least, you could imagine him stepping in if Nader gets hurt, if Cam Johnson is out, something like that, and at least playing a role. So I don't dislike it, but I definitely think it would look better if they do go with a young player at the second two-way spot. Do you think they will? I mean, I just can't, again, get around the fact that they had that opportunity with Alexander and didn't. So you could look at it and be like, well, maybe they already have somebody in mind. Like maybe they knew what they were doing here and it's just about getting the ducks in a row, because they did act pretty quickly on this one. You could also say, you know, they're just valuing experience a ton again, and it's a weird move. Like, but again, I also don't know, does it matter? Like, he's not going to play, so I don't know what to think. He's so old, and it's just throwing everything off.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to our conversation after the Ty-Shon episode, where it's just kind of like, you know, if they're going to use it, we probably don't think they're going to use it on a young player. Like, if I put my money down, they'll probably try to find another project like Hutchinson if they use the other one. But at the moment, I think I agree with you. I would love to see them bring in a prospect. I think there's a lot of talent still out there on the market. And like you mentioned with the 2As, you only get 50 games out of them, I believe. That's off the top of my head. Don't quote me on that. Might be more. That might have been for the 72-game season. But, yeah, either way, you're limiting yourself with him. And it's just like taking a swing. So I would like to see them use both. I think every team is just like, why not? And that's why the majority of teams do use both. So it's always tough to judge these moves until, you see the final product, which we're getting closer to. So overall, I feel slightly better about the whole Ty-Shon thing in terms of at least they had a plan and they're going to replace his spot, but would still like to see them add one more guy.
Yeah. And with, like you said, the lenient two-way policy that they started with last season that they're now going to keep, guys are not, it's not as dramatic of they're driving or flying back and forth between cities just so they don't get a day logged and, do they practice this day versus not? The original rules were really, really convoluted. They've backed down on some of that. So that obviously is helpful. And then the other part that helps me understand this stuff is this move is they don't have the G League team. So if you are going to have a two-way player, you probably don't want somebody too raw, because then you're in a situation where he's not going to be developing that much and you're not giving him those opportunities because your G League team's not an hour and a half north anymore. It might be some other team squad that you're sending somebody to. And, that's not necessarily an awesome developmental environment. So I get it. It all lines up and it all makes sense. It's still just this way that James Jones sees things that is so out of the box is obviously hard to get used to. But let's close things down. I have a question for you, and we'll also maybe start to map out the rotation a little bit. I don't think Hutchison will necessarily factor into it, but we're on that topic, so we might as well. We'll do all of that, though, after one quick break to tell you about Built Bar. The best tasting protein bar ever, my favorite protein bar, and Built Bar likes to call themselves the healthiest candy bar ever, and it's not hard to see why. They are no more than 180 calories, no more than 5 grams of sugar, and yet they pack in 18 grams of protein in there, and they all taste delicious. Covered in 100% chocolate, they're soft, they're easy to chew, they have tons of different flavors. They got the consistent of coconut, cherry, raspberry, mint brownie, double chocolate, salted caramel, and they rotate out others depending on the season. They're going to be ramping it up a ton because, as I've told you before, Built Bar is building a distribution center in Phoenix, meaning that your bars will get to you faster. You don't have to worry about them melting, which I know for maybe some out-of-town listeners might sound crazy, but here it is very much a fact of life. So for our local listeners, they'll be getting to your door quicker, and they're going to be able to get these types of one-offs, around the holidays, they had white chocolate. They have these summer flavors now. It'll all be more extensive because they'll be right in our backyard. So support the local business, support a loyal sponsor of ours, and support a product you're going to love. A very, very delicious protein bar. I use them constantly before, after workouts, just as a snack. It's delicious. So go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your next order. Again, that's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. Today's show also brought to you by BetOnline.ag. It's that time of year again, and all eyes are now turning to football. With teams back on the gridiron to start the football season, BetOnline has 3 big deals for you for the NFL kickoff on Thursday, so only a couple of days left to get involved to take advantage. But here's what you're going to do. Get all the updated odds, props, and contests, starting with the internet's biggest $500,000 NFL mega contest and the world's largest $200,000 NFL Survivor contest, both open now at BetOnline. You can also take advantage of their opening day super promo by making a bet on the Thursday, September 9th season opener between the Super Bowl champion Bucs and the Dallas Cowboys. And even if you lose that bet, your wager will be refunded up to $25 for new customers who sign up using the promo code NFL100. That's promo code NFL100 to get refunded on your wager for Thursday night's game up to $25. Start, first of all, though, folks, if you have not made an account already, by doing so using the promo code Locked On. When you make that first deposit, just put that first little bit of money in there. And right now only, BetOnline is doubling your welcome bonus. Yeah, that's right. A 100% welcome bonus when you use that promo code Locked On. BetOnline is the place to be throughout football season, as well as the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports all year long. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. All right, Brandon, let's close things out. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Is there anyone, you know the draft, you know some of the end of the league roster types of guys better than me. Is there somebody that's on your mind that would be useful to bring in here? I mean, Ty-Shon Alexander might be the answer, but maybe a 1B who they could actually potentially develop into something, somebody who's not on a roster right now that could make a difference.
I do have a list somewhere off the top of my head. I don't know if it's updated right now, so I can't give you any specific names, but I know, especially around this time of year, there's always going to be, and as we get closer to training camp, there's going to be a lot of guys that get cut that I think it could be smart, not just for the Suns, but for a lot of teams, just kind of keep that second two-way open to see if some of those guys get cut. Because there's a lot of teams with roster crunches right now. So, as we get closer and closer, I think that's definitely a good question and something I'm going to look into a little bit more. Before just throwing out some name
that's fair. That's fair. I did say I was putting you on the spot, and I don't want you to say something dumb, so I appreciate that. As in somebody who's already signed, that can be the issue. But Memphis to me is the place to look. I feel like you can just get 4 or 5 guys right off of their roster already. I think they have 20 guys on their roster right now or something close to that. But you're right. All around the league, teams will cut players. There will be guys who get brought into training camp, guys that maybe get some preseason action that eventually don't make the final roster. Those are the times when you can get eyes on players. September is not really that time. Summer League is done. A lot of the Summer League guys have been scooped up already, and we haven't really had a chance to see more basketball. So I would imagine if the Suns did have something in mind here, that it was Hutchison, although he did just get cut 2 days ago. That guarantee date was coming up. You can look around the league and start to see, okay, who is and isn't likely to actually get kept by their current team. So, maybe they did have that in mind. It is fairly James Jones-ish in terms of valuing experience, and not just NBA experience, but college experience in his case, really, really highly. But what do you think the odds are? Because this is something that I feel like we're all kind of assuming, but what are you expecting in terms of this rotation? Because I keep finding myself saying Chris Paul will play less, maybe even Devin Booker could potentially play less. There might be some more blowouts because I think this team will be pretty good during the regular season, but a lot of that stuff happened already. And Chris Paul didn't play a whole ton even last season. He would, hover around 30 minutes most nights. So when you're looking at the depth that somebody like Hutchison, Nader, whoever it might be, provides, I don't really know what to expect. I don't know if I'm actually buying the fact that there will be more minutes to go around for some of these guys lower down on the bench, because we kind of saw them play 10 most nights last year, maybe even 12 on some nights.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for people to find minutes in a perfect world where everyone's healthy and all that. But over the course of an 82-game season, there's going to be stuff that happens, unfortunately. Hopefully nothing serious, but I think this roster is built to withstand those blows before they happen, which is a good thing. That's kind of the thinking behind Elfrid Payton and Frank Kaminsky on your third string. And even, Jalen Smith, I think he's probably going to end up starting on the third string right now with Nader and Cam Johnson ahead of him on the depth chart, and JaVale McGee as well. So just looking at their roster top to bottom, I don't think there's going to be a lot of minutes available for any of those back-end guys right away, obviously. But in back-to-backs, if they rest Paul, someone misses a few games, there's going to be some opportunity for some temporary fill-ins. But right now it's going to be pretty tough to even all the Thad Young people, which I am one of. And I
Same.
Very much on that train. But even
we call him Tradius Young on this show. That's his name.
Tradius Young. So we got to make it happen. But even with him, it's going to be tough to find minutes for him. It's not just for him, but just for everyone else, because it's a ripple effect. So there's not a lot of minutes right now, and I think that could be something that free agents potentially saw with Phoenix in terms of choosing whether they or not they wanted to sign here. Just looking at their roster right now, it seems like their playoff rotation is set already, which is crazy to even say. And then their regular season depth chart, it looks like it's pretty much locked in too.
Yeah, no, it's a great call. I mean, and it's one of the benefits of waiting until the trade deadline and the buyout deadline to maybe make that addition and having the 15th roster spot remain open. Like, I will be critical of them not, filling the two ways or the way that they've approached the draft here and there. Like, those are credible things, but I would definitely don't criticize or find any sort of problem with keeping that 15th roster spot open, because it allows you to not only obviously have the flexibility, that's clear, but you also can wait and see what your roster is going to look like if there is an injury, if there is something like that, because I think Thaddeus Young would be, an obvious plug-in for some of what the Suns are lacking right now, but I don't necessarily think
Vanderbilt. It's another name that I really
Vanderbilt.
like.
Maybe he'll be a two-way player. I don't know with how the Suns are going. But no, exactly. But what I was going to say is none of us thought Torrey Craig would be some sort of miracle fit when they signed him. I think we were all kind of like, cool player. We'll see what happens. And then all of a sudden he becomes pretty valuable, right? So like that stuff happens. And I think that that's sort of where I come down is if it's I can be in two places at once. Like, I think they should definitely do the Thaddeus Young trade or one like it if it were to materialize. But I also think if you're not going to do that, there's no reason to rush into something, fill that roster spot just to fill it, have some, no-name 24-year-old just be there just so you can say you tried something, right? So I think that's kind of where I am. I don't necessarily know if there will be that many more minutes to go around. It might just be different people who get the minutes. And really, I was asking you that question because I wanted you to reaffirm that I'm not going to have to watch Elfrid Payton that much. That was it. I just wanted you to say it to my face that I wasn't going to have to deal with that experience again. So thank you.
Yeah, I hope so. Maybe on back-to-backs we'll get a little dosage, but nothing crazy. And see, I was just checking my list, and Nate Hinton was actually a guy that I liked, but he just signed with the Pacers. So I had to double-check, so I'm glad I didn't just throw a name out there. So
there we go. That's why we do our homework in real time here on Locked On Suns. I think that'll do it, guys. New Sun, Chandler Hutchison, hasn't been confirmed that it's a two-way, but multiple reports indicating that is exactly what will happen, and more to come. I'm sure, this roster is obviously not done. I'm sure the Suns will bring guys in for training camp. It is just 3 weeks away from today when we were recording this, which feels simultaneously very soon, but also not soon enough. So I'm sure you all feel the same way. We'll be 3 times a week through the next couple of weeks. I actually think we are starting 5 times per week again the week prior to training camp, which means we're not too far away from it already. But the rest of this week, I will have shows for you to fill out the 3 this week after that long weekend, and we're making our way through it. Brandon will be back Monday. So that's the schedule. Enjoy the rest of the week, guys. I'll be right there with you, and I will talk to you soon.